To catch us up, if memory serves me.
You were needing my help with that?
If you want to explain thus far, go right on ahead.
For those just joining in, Shadowside is a story that I've been writing based on my spiritual side and dreams that I've been having. Gonzo knows that for a fact. And well, the story revolves around a girl named Mimi, the embodiment of light, brought to this world in order to purge it of the darkness that plagues it. And on on this journey, she comes across, well, as she knows, a motley crew of characters. Yes.
A lot of them based on a whole lot of media.
Yes.
I can name a few right off the top of my head. The shows. You got a few characters from an anime called Azumanga. You have one from Digimon, Digital Monsters.
Two.
Remember, two technically, yes. Yes. One from the Total Drama Island series. Owen or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
You also have Mystery and Mystics Explosion from Explosion Man.
Explosion Man, Explosion. There you go.
You also have, well, you named it Jimmy, but he was the scout from Team Fortress 2. Because, well, from what I thought of it anyway.
Yeah.
And trying to also think.
Zero Ox is saying, I noticed, Shadow, your voice changes pitch. A lot.
He's a lot more gifted at voices.
It's in my palate. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, come to think of it, I'm trying to remember right off the top of my head. I think that's about it. I can't remember anything else. Although what I can say is that now Mimi is on a quest to bring light into this dark, dark world. And the friends are pretty much following her. Last chapter, if memory serves me, Mimi met Shadow, the Pegasus pony.
Shadow Rush.
Yes, Shadow Rush.
My pony self, if you will.
And they've retrieved this one sword from a shrine, and now they're on their quest to...
they got it in the first chapter, you mean. But yes.
Well, yeah, but she got a little better with it.
So, Ed, I see you there. I'm still considering it. It's a possibility, but yeah. It's no worries.
I also got to deal with that one fanfic that Ask Silver Serving Spoon told me, but I think it might be a private recording that'll be hosted on my other channel.
So yes, Mimi is armed with a magic light imbued sword called the Light Force Sword, which basically has helped her save her friend Sora, and also help her on her quest.
And no, it's not Excalibur. God.
No, I'm not that stupid.
We're not that cruel. I don't think we're going to be putting poor Mimi through that kind of torture. I mean, dear God, I don't think almost anybody from Soul Eater would verify Excalibur is unbearable.
But yeah, considering what she's going through in this chapter, I would take that back. But yes, her quest is to find 4 people, known simply as the Four, guardians of him, Mimi's creator, and the creator of the land and the people and creatures that inhabit it. He vanished, separating the 4, and so far Mimi has already found one of them, a little spirit girl known as Kai. And, well, they got off to a bad start.
Yeah. Alright. Oh, hang on.
Oh, take your time there.
Trying to do multiple things at once, trying to eat and then trying to deal with this.
Take your time, it's no rush.
The story ponified. No, only one pony is involved in this. That's Invert's character.
Shadow Rush, yeah.
The others are at their natural states, human or whatnot, and Explosion Man being whatever the hell he is. Alright, now on to chapter 3. And looks like we got
What?
Looks like we got like 41 pages to deal with.
41? What shit? Did I really write that many?
It says page 1 of 41.
Hang on, let me go back and do my... I didn't think I wrote that many. But then again, I tend to lose track of a lot of things, so I'm short-minded like that. Come on, Doc. When I got my laptop back, it ended up getting with a previous version of Word, so...
Yeah,
here on my end, it's saying 33 pages.
maybe because of the font. Maybe because of the font, somehow it swapped or something like that. I don't know. Mine's...
And yes, in Yu Naruto, this is my story, yes.
Why don't we get on with chapter 3, Winds of Reunion. We're going to read as far as we can, about 11:30-ish.
Alright. You want me to stay? Because I don't mind staying. I can...
You can go ahead and stay.
Oh, yes. Yay. If only I am Shadow were on and we get her in too. Then again, I think she'd want to stick around for chapter 4, because that's where things are going to get really dark. I'm not going to spoil anything, but...
Well, alright. Let's see. Not only that, I do need to get myself prepped up for whatever fanfics their silver serving spoons tossed me. Alright. Chapter 3, Winds of Reunion.
Let it begin.
Ever so slowly, the morning sun peeked out over the horizon. Warm, basking light crisscrossed through the shadows of the trees, wiping the evening darkness away. There was but a subtle hint of small birds chirping as they re-emerged from their shelters, ready to start the day anew. As the light slowly snuck into the clear, it illuminated the slumbering bodies of Mimi and Shadowrush. As the little pony continued to lull off, Mimi's eyes slowly inched open, awakening. The morning light blinded her for a moment, causing her to shut them again momentarily. When she reopened them, she met with a surge of brilliance. All around her the forest breathed of life. She felt the cool breeze across her cheeks, the leaves of the trees gently swaying in tune with the wind. The blades of the grass lightly tickled her skin, further arousing her from her sleep. She sat up, feeling re-energized. The environment around her had flourished, all thanks to her. All around Mimi, flora and fauna abound, burst with color. She couldn't help it. She couldn't help but smile as big as she could. Reinvigorated, she sprang up from the ground onto her feet. Looking up at the sky above her, she could see the colors of the early morning. While it had only shifted to that of a sunset-like orange, it is still much brighter. Looking down the path, she could see her destination from afar. A small mountain chain stretching off into the horizon. She was certain this was where Kai had pointed her to. A confident grin formed on her face. She would find this Song Li in no time. With a wind
up.
Sorry.
No worries.
With a wind up, she dashed off down the path, kicking up the dirt as she ran. She called back to her companion, "Come on, Shadowrush," as she kept on running. The sudden noise awoke Shadowrush with a snort. Lazily opening his eyes, he looked to where Mimi had been sleeping in the grass to find she was no longer there. This immediately perked him up, prompting him to grab his hat and flick it back onto his head. "Hey, wait for me, Mimi!" he cried as he broke out in a hasty gallop to catch up with Mimi.
You'll find that, well, Rush has a very hard time keeping up with Mimi, as you'll see later on.
High above the trees, a wispy smoke trail arose through the canopy. The remnants of a campsite lay below. Perched atop a high-hanging tree branch, Kai watched the sun rise into its rightful place in the sky. After spending most of her life in the darkness, it felt good to feel the warm embrace of sunlight once more. Below her, the others were just beginning to awake themselves. The night before, Sora had thankfully ran out of steam in trying to pursue Mimi down the path, albeit having been tag-teamed to the ground by Owen and Tomo. She was the first to arise from her slumber, having had a relatively easy sleep.
No, take your time, no rush.
Kai had already turned around on her perch to greet everyone. Everyone had a good night's rest, she beamed cheerfully. I was doing just fine till Owen started snoring like a bull on a tin roof, Tomo complained. Interesting analogy. Moments later, Chiyo, having slept on top of Owen's chest the entire night, awoke herself. She was seemingly unperturbed by her guardian's rousing sleep pattern. With a smack of his lips, Owen too shook off the last of his slumber. Well, at least you didn't have a problem with it, he said as he ruffled Chiyo's hair. You're the one who's the heaviest sleeper here, argued Tomo. Not as easy when your pillow is literally hard as a rock, you know. Lifting his head, he knocked his fist on the hard surface of his pillow. Tomo continued to whine about her spoiled sleep, prompting Jimmy to sleep in and do probably the most logical thing he had done thus far on this voyage. Act as a mediator.
Yes, I went that far.
God. Both Tomo and Owen were surprised by this, but continued to quarrel. Sora saw an opening, a chance for a head start. If she were quiet enough, she might be able to sneak around the others and resume her search for Mimi. But the thought of this plan, which essentially amounted to temporarily abandoning her friends, made her a bit uncomfortable. After all, they looked to her to find the right path to many things. She didn't like the prospect of it, but with Kai having rejoined them, Sora had a small bit of comfort knowing they'd at least be safe without her. She decided to go for it. Carefully stepping into the shade, away from noticing eyes, she carefully snuck past the group, being wary of the still snoozing explosions. Because the attention of the others was diverted to the feud unfolding before them, Sora's form did not cross their gaze. Thus, she easily slipped by them. Once back on the path, she looked up behind her to take one last look at the group. Half of them were still waking up, while the rest was watching the fracas between Jimmy, Owen, and Tomo. She once again thought to herself that they would not notice her missing until a little later, giving her a more...
Easy there. Take your time, I keep saying.
Autism.
Just take it easy.
Giving her more than enough time to start down the road. She started off at a brisk pace for a few steps before going somewhere. This caught her off guard. When she looked back to see who she had bumped into, Sora was met by the concerned gaze of Kai, arms crossed and eyebrow raised. Oh, Kai, nice to see you. I was just, what was I going to do? Oh, I was just going to leave us all in the dust so you can try to catch up with our little runaway. Sora knew right there that she had been figured out. There will be no finding her way out of this one. So, with it out in the open, she relented. Okay, you got me. Look, Sora, I know she must have left some kind of impression on you, as she has for the rest of us, but what were you thinking? Abandoning your friends because you just miss her? Sora didn't answer right away. She knew it. She knew Kai was right. What she was doing was certainly not what a leader like her would do. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? I don't know what I was thinking. My best excuse now is that something in my mind was driving me to press onward. What exactly is it that fuels your desire to find her again? Is this about that implied little thing you two had going on? Immediately Sora gasped. Her secret had been uncovered. There's definitely no avoiding it now. Who told you that? Who else but that little motor mouth tagging along with you guys? This resulted in a glare from Sora. Damn that Jivvy. Never able to keep his mouth shut for 2 seconds. My larger point, however, is that if you pull a stunt like this again, your own friends aren't going to think that your significant other takes greater precedence over them. And since you're their leader, you wouldn't want to lose them now, would you? Kai's words struck true. Sora was again reminded that she could never just abandon her friends. She'd stick by them through the worst of times, especially now. Looking back at Kai, she said, "You're right. I'm sorry, Kai. It's going to be okay, Sora. I promise. We'll find Mimi again." She placed a comforting hand on Sora's shoulder, affirming her promise. What am I going to tell the others now? A sound of multiple sets of footsteps creep up behind him, prompting Kai to look over Sora's shoulder. It looks like you won't have to go far back there. She turned Sora around, where she was met by the rest of her group, all with blank looks on their faces. Of their numbers, little Chio looked the most stirred. "Why'd you leave so early, Miss Sora? Is something wrong?" Sora turned to Kai, hoping she'd back her up. Kai simply raised her eyebrow again, smirking knowingly. She knew Sora had started this mess, so she was going to have to explain it to herself, without any help. Taking a deep breath, Sora got down to Chio's level. "I just needed to stretch my legs. Dirt doesn't make a good bed after all." It took a moment for this to register in Chio's head, but she seemed to accept the answer. "It's easy if your bed is made of Owen," she giggled as her tubby titan of a guardian pulled her into a hug. Sora laughed a little as well. "Well, since we're awake now, what say we get going again?" The others all clamored in agreement, beginning their trek down the path once more. As Sora went to rejoin them, Kai stopped her in place for the last time. Smiling, she said, "Nice job. Thanks." And they were off. More than a distance away, Mimi had still been following the path, now coming upon an opening in the trees. With Rush still trailing behind her, she sprinted forth, an added spring in her step. When at last she reached the end, she skidded to a halt, taking a good look at what lay ahead of her. Here the forest ended, the landing trading lush greens and leaves for warped crags of stone and earth. The path here now ended from the cliff Mimi stood atop, down to a steep slope, waving here and there and everywhere. Further off into the horizon sat a small chain of rugged mountains. A small haze hung over the range, a sign that there was still some cleansing left to do. Shadowrush, who had finally caught up with the young speedster, observed the mountains with her as he caught his breath. "So that's where Song Li is?" Mimi pondered. "Somewhere within that range, yes," Rush answered. When he noticed the hate-bearing cloud hovering overhead, he shuddered. "Something tells me we're not the only ones looking for her. We'd best keep moving." She nodded in agreement, but looking away from the scenery, she thought to herself, how are we going to cover that much ground? With the broken path before them, it would not be an easy trek. Walking upon the great many points and outcrops would surely take a good long while. Mimi rubbed her chin in thought, wondering what the proper method of approaching this obstacle could be. If walking was not a safe option, what did that leave for herself and her companion? Looking back to Shadowrush, he noticed one of his wings twitch, a simple voluntary reaction to the cool breeze. Feeling the wind in her hair, something clicked in her mind. If to travel by foot wouldn't suffice, perhaps a more unexpected form of motion would work.
Yep, going there.
Mimi turned to Rush, with her mind set. "Shadowrush, Promise me you won't freak out." "Why'd you say that?"
Here it comes.
Looking towards the mountains, Mimi stepped to the edge. Without so much as a hesitation, she casually threw her arms to her sides and dropped off the cliff. Shadow Rush, naturally oblivious as to what Mimi had been thinking, scrambled to the edge, devastated. "Oh my God, Mimi!" he cried as he looked down into the depths below, desperately scanning for any sign of the little girl. The way down was dark and abyssal, and barely any light escaping. Rush was certain now that she had fallen to her death.
And right there, Digital Railroader was like, "What?"
Easy does it. When the realization hit him, he was devastated. The one person in this world, the light to the ever-growing shadow, had now done herself in for whatever reason he was unaware of. Whatever strength he had in him, it was fading now. Turning away from the pit, he fell forward and covered his face with his hooves, struggling to keep himself contained. Come on, Rush. You promised yourself you wouldn't cry. His body shuddering. It felt like tears would pour forth at any moment. With Mimi gone, he had left his owner down. He let his emotions take over and whimpered. But before the first tear could fall, Shadow Rush was literally lit up from behind. He stopped and took a breath, raising his head when he noticed the ground before him illuminated. With a sniffle, he turned around to see what would be the cause of this. He was greeted by none other than Mimi. The ecstatic girl was flying, or rather floating, in front of him. Bathed in a warm aura, she found herself flipping through the open air, forwards and backwards, in an attempt to stay upward. What do you know? She could fly! You scared us out to death, God damn it!
That's me. I like to keep y'all on your toes. And once again, Digital Railroader was like, "What?" I am so sorry.
Hang on, there we go. Rush promptly rubbed his eyes, doing a frantic check to see that if he was not hallucinating, and that Mimi really was still alive. When certain it was a reality, he propped himself back up. "Mimi?" The girl didn't answer verbally, but instead nodded her head elatedly. "You're flying, I know!" Mimi exclaimed excitedly. "How?" The stuttering pony could not contain his awe. "I thought you ended up as a red stain on the canyon walls." "Well, it wasn't too hard. All I had to do was just think light breeze thoughts." "That easy, was it?" Rush questioned with a discerning look. "Alright, maybe it wasn't that easy. Falling into an abyss isn't a comforting thought to try and block out." "Well, no shit, Sherlock."
Nope.
Okay, need to give me some bites. Oh.
I'll be back. I gotta help with something.
Okay. Ugh. Yeah. She twirled around in her position before Rush went on. "Are you certain you can control yourself? You look pretty unstable." Mimi quickly quelled his doubts. "Oh, I'll be fine, Rush. Nothing like spreading your wings against the wind, you know?" This compelled Shadow. It was true, his Pegasus nature filled him with joy upon taking to the sky, but being that he had not utilized his own wings since his owner's disappearance, he had been much out of practice.
And I'm back. Sorry, just had to find my work shirt.
Went through another paragraph or two.
No rush. I heard everything, so.
But his thought process was soon interrupted by, "Come done! The wind's perfect! Before Mimi flipped around and with little effort propelled herself forward on course to the mountains. Rush once again was left in the dust. Oh, come on, Mimi! Don't leave me behind like this! Rush blurted, flustered. He knew now he was going to have to stop talking and get going if he was ever going to keep up with a feisty little girl.
Did somebody say feisty?
Damn it.
I'm sorry, I had to. Just this one time.
Alright, Rush. You can do this. Just need to get a feel for the wind again. Carefully unfolding his wings, he let the breeze blow past them. Feeling the cool air ruffle the feathers. The sensation sent shivers all through his body as he shuddered in delight. Mimi was right. The wind was just the right condition for taking it to the sky. Looking towards the landscape, Rush arched back, waiting for the precise moment to leap. The wind seemed to pick up naturally, aiding his senses further. When at last the right gust of wind blew past him, he made his move. Leaping forward, he rocketed off the cliff, letting the wings lift him higher in the air. As he reached his natural peak, Rush found himself flying naturally, without a shred of discontent. Diving and rolling through the air, he felt alive, as if this was something he had been missing for years. And not once did he look back or lose his composure, continuing his pursuit of Mimi off towards the mountains. Meanwhile...
Yes.
Sora's group had already begun their morning trek. Kai, having a better sense of direction, had taken the lead in order to better guide them through the woods. Not many words were spoken, as some of the group was still shaking their slumber off. Their silence at least paid off for the comforting sounds of the wilderness. It brought an odd sense of peace, despite the dangerous trek they're on. After a good distance walk, the group was faced by a fork in the road. Before anyone, primarily Jimmy, could jump to the conclusion which path to take, Kai answered for them. Both these paths lead to where we need to go. But that one there, pointing to the path on the left, leads to a crevice. I doubt our friend Mimi could have made it any farther than that. So if I'll just keep following me, we'll be on our way. Kai then led everyone down the path on the right, their long trek resuming. As they continued on to the end of the forest, everyone looked to be content. All but one, Sora. Even with the color restored to this formerly tainted piece of land, she could not shake the feeling of being watched by some darker entity. As she walked, her eyes darted to and fro through the trees, looking for something that wasn't there. Miss Sora? The sound of little Chio, who had been asking Kai how she knew her way through the woods so well, snapped Sora out of her trance. She looked down to the small girl, trying not to act surprised. Yes, Chio? What are you looking for? Oh, nothing really. Just thought I saw a butterfly or something. Chio tilted her head, processing her answer. She simply turned her head back around to Kai to resume their conversation. Sora continued to look around her, still convinced something was amidst her. She tried to look calm to the others so as to not draw attention to herself. But still, she felt an unnerving sensation around her, as if something were close to her, breathing down her neck. Taking a gulp of breath, she maintained a small distance from the others, keeping straight on their path. When one of the group looked back at her, she simply put on a fake smile to dispel their worries.
Poor gal.
With another breath, she tried to put her paranoid thoughts out of her mind, and for a moment she felt a calm approaching her troubled state. A small chuckle escaped her, that of relief. She finally continued on without care. Think you're strong, Sora? A chill ran through her body. She knew the voice, too familiar to put out of her mind for even one moment. So she thought. She turned around for the last time and was greeted by a shapely silhouette. Scared of your own shadow? That you wouldn't like what I have in store for you. Sora gasped in panic. This was sound enough to finally catch the attention of the entire group, who already seemed relatively off-put by this. Oi! You alright there, Sora? Jimmy queried. I said I was fine! Sora projected her response with an unnatural anger, at least by her friends' views on her emotions. They all backed away from her, shocked. Chio, however, trembled in fright at her sudden outburst, clutching Owen in comfort. Realizing her response was truly unlike anything she'd say, she tried to rectify herself. Chio, no, she got down on one knee, trying to reach out to her frightened little friend. I didn't mean to yell, I was just a little off, that's all. Sora reached her hand out to brush the tears away from the girl's cheeks, but Chio only shaded further away from her. Owen held her tight, looking at Sora with a look of unease. Maybe you just need to hang back, Sora. Whatever's bugging you, we don't need to share it with us. No, wait, I didn't. Her reply was cut off as the rest of the group continued on, giving her disdain looks as they passed her. Kai, however, stayed behind, eyebrow raised and looking very unpleased. Letting our imagination get the better of us, are we, Sora? I swear I didn't mean to shout at her, Kai. I was seeing things, and something came over me. Well, whatever it is, you had better shake it off quickly before you fully alienate yourself from everyone else. Kai shifted back around to catch up with the group, leaving Sora to trudge slowly on behind them, not wanting to make a bigger fuss than she already had. And where were we? Oh, what about them two? The warm, fresh air was doing the two flyers well. Their spirits were being refreshed as they soared up and down, to and fro and all about. Occasionally Mimi would dip and dive in her trajectory, but Rush would immediately swoop down from his altitude to help her readjust, all with an uplifting smile. With effort, the two at last managed to find a suitable landing point upon the closest part of the mountains. Mimi, still a bit inexperienced, found herself stumbling a bit upon her feet touching the rocky earth beneath her. Nearly falling face first, she looked around her new surroundings, a faint smile on her face, knowing that she had made it.
Don't worry, she'll improve somewhat.
I just need a little more practice.
Obviously, yes.
Mimi and Rush then craned their necks upwards, looking to the cragged monuments before them. A wavering, albeit rough path was etched between the massive rocks, and began their hike up to find the woman they sought. Ooh. As they trudged along the path, neither of the two could let their gaze occasionally stray from the hazy cloud high above them. Mimi looked to be fascinated by his languid beauty looming over them and silently rumbling in the sky. Something about it held a greater sense of dread, though. Rush noticed Mimi's continued observation, her eyes falling from the path. He gently prodded her knee to gain her attention for a moment. You seem to be fascinated by that cloud, Mimi. I don't know, Rush. Something about it just seems, well, discomforting, obvious as it looks. Whatever's put it there, it's gotta go. It's making me feel uneasy just being under it. Do you think maybe Ophelia? Nah, it couldn't be her. Not in the weakened state she's in now. Suddenly there came a quake of thunder from the cloud above, catching them both off guard. Mimi was almost certain that she saw some sort of squealing mass wriggle through the haze. Something that alarmed her. Rush didn't see it himself, but from Mimi's stance, he could tell she was spooked. Are you absolutely sure about her being even close to how you described? Rush questioned uneasily. Both of them looked at each other, worried visages upon both of their faces. Another crack of thunder was enough to send the two into a hurried sprint up the rugged path, not looking back for one moment. Their friend was in trouble. Several minutes of running brought them up to a flat-looking plateau, high above on one of the summits. Here a clearer view of the landscape could be viewed, unobscured by the low-hanging mass of darkness above them. The winds blew more freely, given the altitude, peeking down to the lush forests below the range. All the thoughts of despair and worry were immediately cleansed from Mimi's mind as she took in the lovely panorama before her. The whispering wind eased her stress, and for a moment she and Rush almost forgot that there was still someone here that they sought. Wow, to think this is what Song Lee must see every morning, Mimi said in awe. When there's not a rumbling menace of shadows obstructing her sun, you mean? Replying her offish companion. Of course, but I wouldn't mind waking up to my own little sunset every day, you know. Oh, definitely. But this is all said and done, maybe we'll come back here to see what this all looks like. Cleanse of this, taint. Hang on.
No rush.
A little drink. From behind the two, unbeknownst to them, a figure dropped to the ground from an overlooking alcove. Resting on one knee for a moment, it observed the new visitors that had shown themselves into its territory from the shadows. Seeming to deem them harmless, it rose to its feet and began to stride over to them. So, what's Song Lee like? You've been with him. You must know something about her, Mimi asked Shadow. Had it not been so long since I last saw her, I could tell you many things about her. This taint has separated us from a lot of good people, Mimi. Oh. Her answer came as a discouraged sigh. But, as Kai said, she's quite extravagant and jumpy. One minute she'll be cool and collected, but if you get on the rough side, she'll be all over the walls and all over you in an instant. Well.
What?
Sorry, it reminds me of a whole lot of people. There's just a whole lot of names come to mind.
Like?
Let's see. Nice but mean. Fluttershy, for instance?
Perhaps maybe murder shy, perhaps?
Right.
Oh then.
Alright, I want to tend to something real quick. There we go. Behind them, the figure only advanced closer, building on their naivety. Do you think this cloud's affected her at all? Mimi asked. Rush froze for a moment, contemplating what sort of evil lurked within the sky. His simple response was, no, I'm certain she's okay. Well, why don't you ask her yourself, then? A sudden voice from behind them caused them both to jump. When they dared to look behind them, they were greeted by a new face, one that was smiling ever so brightly. Before them stood a woman, Asian in descent, with black curly hair that stopped just above her shoulders, fairly tall and shapely in her chest. Clad in a red tank top and light blackish pants, Mimi could feel she had a sort of friendly radiance to her. She could not help but notice the woman was holding her hands behind her back as she bounced up and down her feet, never once revealing them to her or Shadow Rush. Were you two looking for little old me? The woman playfully spoke. Her observers looked to each other, open-mouthed and astonished, with no idea what to say first. Rush began to say, Are you Song Lee? How did you guess? The woman named Song Lee giggled heartily. It's been so long since I had visitors. Slowly, Mimi began to return the smile, loosening up any tension she had of the woman before them, staking her claim on her territory. Rush, however, still had a slight feeling of unease. You're awfully cheery for someone whose home is currently shrouded in shadows. Rush once again directed their attention to the dark mass above them. Song Lee, however, seemed rather unfazed. What, that old thing? She looked up. Pshaw. Sure, the sun's not shining as it used to be, but how could I complain when I still have this nice little view of the cliffs? I know it, Mimi replied just as cheerful. It's so nice to just look down at the valley, isn't it? Both girls giggled in unison, agreeing. They briefly looked over their shoulders to the view behind them before Song Li suddenly continued. So you're the little one that's been sent to find me. Hearing those words come from Song Li's mouth as if she knew who Mimi really was, truly was not what the little light girl was expecting. This left her in a state of confusion. How did you know I was coming? Well, the forest didn't revitalize out of nowhere all on its own, now did it? At least not from what I could see from here. But let us explain how you knew you were coming. Well, when you brought the colors back to Kai's little glade, Mimi was about to inject again, but Song Li quickly shushed her. I kind of figured that little Spitfire was still hanging in there. Realize that, as one of the four, I share a spiritual bond with the other three, when two of them are still stewing in their anger. Of course, but I digress. So when Kai sent you my way, you knew? Mm-hmm. You learned something new about us as you go on, eh, Mimi?
I'm kind of realizing I wrote that part a bit wrong. I'm looking back on it now, it should be, so when Kai sent us your way, instead of...
I know that. It can be easily fixed.
Yeah.
It's alright.
Ah, well.
Mimi nodded, accepting this fact. But soon she was just as off-put as Rush was about to what Song Li could have been hiding. As she started to ask what was on her mind, Rush did it for her. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but exactly what's behind your back? You're making us both nervous. Song Li's happy look dropped for a minute, looking behind her back from both her sides. Not wanting to keep them, she unwillingly brought her hands from behind her, following orders. She turned them over and flexed her fingers, showing that there was nothing to hide at all. See, just my hands. Nothing harmful about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Rush breathed uneasily. I was trying his best not to do anything that might antagonize Song Li, for he vaguely remembered her unpredictable temper. He tried to put the thought out of his mind for the moment, instead of refocusing his attention, along with Mimi, on helping the seemingly normal woman before them clear her land of the shadow contaminating it. So, going back to this ugly thing above us, I'm pretty sure Mimi here might be able to help you get rid of it. His proposal was immediately greeted by a sudden gasp from Mimi, who looked at him in desperation before looking back to Song Li. The woman seemed mildly interested in what he had to say. Really now, you would do another purge of this little bit of land just for me? She chirped. Mimi gulped, knowing if she were to agree, she would have quite the order to fulfill. While she still had power enough to cleanse the object of everyone else's affliction, it would take quite a toll on her mental and physical being. But nevertheless, she would not let her quest come to such an abrupt end. Taking a deep breath, she proceeded. Yes, that might be tricky, but I think I could bring the sun back. Could you now? Hearing Mimi's confidence seemed to invoke a different reaction in Song Li. Oh, that's nice and all, but maybe you prefer to come back after you deal with the other parts of the four? I mean, it'll be easier.
Here we go.
This caused both Shadow and Mimi to raise an eyebrow at her. That's not the kind of reaction either of them, Primary Rush, expected from someone like her. Why so hesitant to send us off, Song Li? Rush questioned. Oh, no reason. I thought you guys might like to take care of the other parts of the four before you come back for me. Only makes sense to take the bigger cause of this shadow out, right? Suspicions grew now, Mimi approaching the sudden backtracking girl. Maybe, but why did you change your mind so quickly, huh? Slowly tried to find an answer that would bring the heat off of her. She could only stumble on her words now, only solidifying the thought that she was really hiding something.
And Digital Railroader has it right there. It's a trap!
No reason. I just don't want to drain you after you already spent a good bit of your magic with Kai. A nervous giggle escaped her throat. She began to shuffle nervously past Mimi and Rush, trying to usher their gaze away from her and to a path leading downwards through the plateau. Off in the distance, she pointed to a patch of land that was even more shrouded in darkness than the mountains they stood on. See that over there? That's where you'll be heading. That's where this cloud came from. She attempted to deliver her words coolly now, but with her company now growing even more wary of her wavering confidence, it was not being made any easier. Shadow Rush tilted his head up to Mimi, speaking her softly enough so that Songli might not hear them. I seriously can't believe the only one who thinks something isn't right with her, Mimi. She's never been this jumpy in front of anyone before. That's saying something about her. Yeah, and why would she send us off after we just gotten to know each other? Hang on a second. It was then that something caught Mimi's eye. Took Rush a moment to notice as well, but there it was. Something dripping down the back of Songli's top.
Those that are squeamish, I suggest you mute this now.
Whatever could have been, it was black and viscous. Viscous. It was not making Mimi or Rush feel any less worried. Mimi decided she would not let this go unsolved. Approaching Songli, as her attention was still pinned in the distance, she kept her wits about her. She could have easily used her sword to prod at whatever was on her back, but that would bring the attention to the full extent of her power, something she didn't want Songli to find out in her current state. Without hesitating, Mimi quickly pulled up the back of Songli's top, wanting to find a cause of the girl's unrest. What she and Rush saw immediately guarded the reaction of pure disgust and shock, both of them having to choke back some vomit. Slathered all over Songli's back was some sort of black sludge-like substance, its surface sleek and bubbly. Is Songli leaking crude oil?
Not quite.
Oh. Mimi's only response drew out of her at this disgusted groan. She had an energy to lower the back of the shirt back down, but she found her limb frozen due to what she was witnessing. Shadow was just as appalled. Oh, my sweet heavens, she got her. Rush realized. Huh? That stuff on her back. I know what the stuff is. And I already feel that it's taking effect. His words struck truer than they should have. Quicker than they could react, Songli threw a fevered strike at Mimi. It came close to connecting with Mimi's head by inches, sending the flustered girl back. Rejoining Rush's side, she tried to process what just happened, but Songli would not hold back, approaching them like a woman possessed. Well, this has taken a sudden turn for the worse.
Yes.
Took you that long to realize it? Shouldn't be surprised. You're only a kid after all. I'm not a little... Mimi tried to complain, but was quickly silenced by a rough nudge from Shadow Rush. Never mind, whatever you are, what have you done to Songli? Songli's stature rose from a hunched combat-ready stance to a rigid standing pose, all with a wicked smile on her face. It was then that Mimi saw her pupils flash from their natural brown to a stinging violet, a color Mimi knew belonged to someone much more dangerous.
Surprise!
One name left Mimi and Rush's mouths. Ophelia. Not quite, Songli replied. I'm still no one else but me, little Mimi. Just got a little pick-me-up from Ophelia. She began to advance towards the two menacingly. That stuff on my back? Black tears. Ophelia's own little source of power. Not for the faint of heart, but... She breathed a wicked snicker. It's worth the risk. All you lose is your self-control and sanity. And all I have to do now to keep it going is make sure you don't get any further. Mimi found a finger pointed at her as Song Li finished. The one sign that signaled the fight was inevitable. As she continued to back up from the threat before her, she tried one last time to reason. I've already been forced to turn my hand once with Kai, Song Li. I really don't want to hurt you. This only brought the influenced woman closer to her, chuckling darkly. Well, that's a pity. Looks like I'll be making Ophelia's wish that much easier to fulfill then. Song Li then launched forward with her fist outward, poised to smash into some part of her opponent's body. Instead, she found herself dashing through a bright flash of light, and her fist connecting with the hard rock wall where Mimi once stood. A massive sting of pain shot through Song Li's arm. It was too intense for her to describe. As she slowly and shakily drew her arm back, the only sound to escape her throat at first was a highly pained squeak. She sounds familiar, though. Somebody look her up.
What's it? What?
Song Li sounds familiar. Sorry. Ow! Her cry of pain was drawn out and exaggerated. Unclenching her fist, her fingers made loud crackling noises as she strained to unfurl her stricken joints. Her agony was soon replaced by ire as she whipped... Oh, ire. Give me a break!
Eesh. Sorry.
Can't give me a bite. Sounds like my burgers are getting cold.
Oh dear.
There we go. Burger, why you got cold? Because I've been reading this for quite a while. It's almost an hour or so.
And then Spectral Reaper getting on with Song Li there. No pain, no gain!
You're regaining pain. Her agony is soon replaced by ire as she whipped her head around to try and find where Mimi had vanished to. Finding nothing, her attention then fell onto the lone Shadow Rush. Feeling those cold eyes stare at him as the woman before him began her advance, he found himself back up against the rock.
Yes, I'm totally going there.
Another rock? Man, this must be a rocky place.
I meant the other way.
Between a rock and a hard place? Now, let's do anything drastic. You wouldn't hurt a cute little pony now, would you? Cute, but I still need to vent on something. And since Lighty took off... Oh, excuse me.
Excuse you?
And since Lighty took off, and you're the only living thing here now... Her fist raised high into the air with evil intent, aiming to bring it down on the poor creature's head. Rush cowered in fear, awaiting the worst, but before he could be struck, possibly the most obvious answer to his problem came to him. Right! I'm a Pegasus!
I'm so sorry.
One of your Gmon tendencies comes to mind. Oh. Fly, you idiot!
One sniper melon.
Swiftly unfurling his wings, he made a hastily leap upwards. Just as Song Li threw another invigorated strike his way. For the second time, her fist struck hard, solid rock, the pain she already endured multiplying twofold. This time her reverse was a loud, agonizing shriek. Motherfuck! Pulling back, she shook her hand feverishly, trying to regain the feeling in her joints, all screaming in pain. It took her slightly longer to recover, not even the tears being able to shake her back up. It was in that moment that Mimi found her chance to pop back into appearing, delivering a quick jab to Sonny's body, damaging enough to send her back a few steps. At least now I can see those tears certainly don't make you injury-proof. Shut it! She said that made me strong enough, Sonny retorted. I didn't think she lied to my face. Because your thoughts aren't doing too well with all that stuff affecting you. If you just let me fix you up... Her gesture was cut off by another swipe from Song Li. I don't think so! With no option left in trying to be friendly, Mimi readied herself for her last method of action. Stand and fight.
Here we go.
I really didn't want to do this, Song Li, but if this is how it's gonna be, then I'll get those black tears off you by force. Song Li chuckled, her pupils flashing violet again. That's really your best comeback? Mimi only glared. No matter, you won't reach Ophelia, regardless, light girl. Your little journey ends here. Leaving Rush in the dust, Mimi darted forward to meet Song Li, now determined to save the woman from the dark forces controlling her.
That is a nice change of pace, is it not?
However, we have to go back to the other group. Still a ways away from the range, Sora had fallen to the back of her group, crestfallen. She truly had not meant to yell at Chio somewhat. A dark part of her mind had suddenly shown its ugly hide for a brief moment. But the one outburst seemed to have the rest of the journey awkwardly quiet. Nobody had spoken a word since Kai had led them safely out of the forest. They instead chose to follow Kai in silence rather than say anything else they fear might provoke Sora again. This only made the sullen girl feel a greater sense that she wasn't making a good example of herself now. Chio had calmed down, but still stayed close to Owen. Her guardian already said that Sora was probably still a little tired, which seemed to ease the shaken girl's fears, but their leader still trudged on behind him, not wanting to start anything else. I don't hate you, Sora. A southern-style voice caught her attention. Her depressed haze cleared when she noticed Osaka, who has now joined her side. I know you mustn't have been feeling right this early. I know you might have scared us, but we don't hate you. You just shocked us, that's all. I guess, was Sora's small response. As for Jimmy, she underestimated Osaka's resolve. I'm sure if you just apologized to Owen, he and Chio would understand, you know? Her words hung like haze for a moment, before Sora finally nodded her head slowly. This earned another smile from Osaka, as she urged Sora forward. Oh god, Digital Railroad her. Go to Ty Davis and take some leadership skills.
Oh god, it's also sad because I happen to know those characters. So
I remember Digimon Season 1 and 2. And 3.
Amen.
I faked fearing Digimon Frontier. Fake being afraid of Digimon Frontier because I didn't want to deal with any more Digimon.
I kind of dropped off after the first two seasons. I kind of lost interest, but I digress.
There we go. This earned another smile from Osaka as she urged Sora forward. Upping her pace a little, Sora approached Owen, who had now taken Chio atop his shoulder. She hesitated to get his attention for another second before gently poking his arm. What's up, Sora? Owen, She hung on the last word, still nervous, but looking up she noticed Kai looking back at her with a reassuring smile, as if to say, go on. I'm sorry for snapping at you and the others. I should have better control over myself. Owen opened his mouth to answer, but found his words taken by his little companion. Oh, it's okay, Miss Sora. I know you must have still been waking up. Hearing this caused Sora to look back towards Osaka, who winked with her trademark goofy smile. Sora slowly returned it, finally moving back to join Kai at the head of the group. All met with further reassurance from the others. Smiles now, chirped the explosions.
Friends now.
Rough start, but it can only pick up now, eh? Tomo added. It's all good, so don't sweat it, crooned Jimmy. It was here that Sora found herself back in the position of leading the group down the path, Kai falling back to her side now. Quietly she spoke to her. See, no real damage done. Just keep it cool from here on out and we'll find Mimi again in no time. Sora said nothing else, instead holding her head up high and looking straight. As they continued down the path, now finally out of the lush woods, the group found they were much closer to the mountain range now. But it wasn't until a few more steps forward that I noticed what Mimi had already been seen before them. The cloud still loomed over the sky, seeming to stare down at them like a menace. Having been under the cover of the trees, none of them had noticed the cloud until now. Of them all, Kai and Sora seemed to be the most worried. I don't remember that little thing before there, and I'm certain Mimi had cleaned this little plot of land up already, Sakaki interjected.
Yeah.
You forgot to miss Sakaki. It's okay. She's powerful, but I don't think her power can go that far yet. Miss Sakaki does have a point, Chio chirped in. Do you think maybe someone was waiting for her?
Maybe.
Just as Chio finished, a booming clap of thunder erupted from the cloud, lightning crackling with it. The clap echoed out from the reaches of the summits, branching down towards the group, the ground quaking under them. Mountains go boom! Squawked Explosion Man. Anyone up for a good sprint? Jimmy quivered. It's not like we're in a hurry to find her or anything, right? Another crack of thunder sounded out from the distance, as if to heighten their already lingering fears. They knew the time for stalling was over. I'd say we move, Sora cried out before everyone. You don't have to tell us twice, both Kai and Tomo replied. And with that, the entire group took off with a burst of energy, Sora leading a pack as they charged towards the mountains, determined to get to their friend before it was too late. Well, you better get the hell out of here. I don't think you'll like what it feels like to be struck by lightning. Oh, who's mentioning me now?
What?
People messaging me left and right, dear God.
Ignore it. Busy at the moment.
I told him do not disturb, but then again, it's probably the group. It's group chats. Yeah, it's the group chats.
Yeah.
You can't control what goes on in the group chats.
Let's see how our little fight on the mountains is going now.
Well, we shall. Back atop the summit, Mimi and Song Li had engaged in a heated fistfight. The two had traded blows left and right, their struggle erupting all across the plateau. But with the Black Tears further fueling her resolve, Song Li seemed to have a slight advantage over Mimi, despite her best efforts. Poor Shadow Rush, on the other hand, was left to hop around like a jackrabbit to try and avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Still, Mimi would not submit, even after a solid straight to her gut sent her staggering. Song Li attempted to follow up, but was instantly greeted by a burst of light from Mimi. Temporarily blinded, she clutched her eyes, swinging her arms in any direction she believed her foe to be standing. Mimi followed up on her own, warping forward to meet Song Li and delivering a two-punch combo. The second blow hit its mark hard, causing Song Li to fall to the ground, the wind knocked out of her.
Mm-hmm. Heavy stuff, I know.
And one hell of a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Cat fight, sorry. Mimi stepped back, taking a well-deserved deep breath. Rush trotted back to her, checking to be sure she was not seriously hurt. Looks like she got you good there, Mimi. He noticed how she gently clutched her stomach, wincing. It's nothing, I can't walk off. She tried to disguise her pain, but the adrenaline rush she had through her clash was now waning. Falling to one knee herself, she hissed through her teeth and whimpered. Oh, easy there, kid, Rush exclaimed. His first action was to gently ease Mimi up against a rock, telling her to keep breathing in and out as she was already doing. I know you're a tough cookie, but even you got your limits. Now just tell me where it hurts. He carefully placed the hoof on her belly, gently pushing it down in certain spots to see where she had taken the brunt of her attacker's blow. Within seconds, he found the right spot, causing Mimi to lurch forward and cry out in pain. Quickly removing his hoof, he eased Mimi back up against a rock, trying to prepare a spell that would at least soothe her aching midsection. But as he was in mid-citation of the spell, Mimi looked above her, a sudden fear entering her. Very shakily, she got back on her feet, trying to find a lighter spot to stand in. Naturally, Rush was clueless as to this action. Are you sure you can stand like that? Yeah, just needed some more light, that's all. But there's still plenty of sunshine, even without a cursed cover above us, isn't there? Mimi tried desperately to find an excuse to hide her little handicap. I guess I just thought this would be a better spot for fighting. She put on the brightest smile she could to emphasize herself. Rush simply lowered his eyelids, willing to keep up with her game for a little longer. The two could not resist any longer, as Song Li, still intoxicated into tears, was back up to her own feet in an instant, growling at Mimi. Yet this devolved into a seething chortle, as with a twitch in her step, she made her advance again.
It's about to go down now, and, well, I found another mistake that I haven't noticed. You'll see it, though, but...
Oh, little Mimi, you have no idea how pissed off I am now. Tilting her head back, her giggling progressed into a demented laugh. Mimi took a step back, wondering what could come next. Her answer came when Sung Li lowered her head. Her eyes are now metamorphosed from natural green to red with black pupils. So why don't I just show you? Yep,
and there's a mistake. Well, where it says green, it should be brown, because...
I see.
Yeah.
Although I don't know what this person originally looked like, so I got nothing to go on.
It was not any other one else, just something of mine.
Kind of remembering that one punchy girl from a fighting game, so...
Mimi is solar-powered? I would not go that far, Digital Railroad her.
Well, not that far, but she does get a little extra oomph from light.
She gets iffy in the darkness.
Yeah. As the smile on her face grew even longer, there was no more denying it. She had completely lost herself to the black tears. What followed next was a grotesque display. When Mimi and Rush dared to look down, they saw Sung Li's hands were drastically reforming. The skin on both hands was beginning to gradually wither away and fall off, bodily fluids dripping off of them. All her observers could do was stare at this transformation, mouths agape in speechless abhorrence. All the while, Sung Li kept the same twisted smile on her face, fully enjoying their fearfulness. When the last of the dying skin had fallen off, all that remained of her hands were bare flesh, muscle, and bone. She just stopped before Mimi, letting her exposed fingers bend freely to regain the sensation within them. After a few flexes, she revealed her own secret weapon. 5 sharpened knives emerged from the tips of each of her fingers, viscous fluids spilling out with them. Raising them up, she crossed her hands in front of her, displaying her weapons to further discourage her audience. Shadow Rush? Mimi quivered. Mimi? Aren't your tears making her do that too? No, she's always been able to do that.
Shocker.
Fuck! Song Li taunted the girl before her, now fully in loss of her senses. Do you like them? I can bring it out whenever I please. Guess you could say this cat's got claws, eh?
Bad pun, I know, but I had to slip it in somehow.
well, I don't know. The second she finished, she instantly leaped forward, trying to pounce on Mimi. The poor girl was only able to sidestep out of her path at the last possible second, barely dodging a clawed swipe. With Song Li's heightened anger, the cloud above the summit followed suit. Its gloomy haze darkened, its hold over the mountains expanding out and almost completely engulfing the three in darkness. Mimi was now trying quite hard to find a spot that was still covered in sunlight. Even Song Li was utterly confused by this. Okay, exactly why are you jumping around in the light like that? She questioned impatiently. Mimi was now running out of excuses to disguise her act, finally concluded with, well, you see, I just... forget it! Tired of holding back her power, she finally conjured her light force sword with a swing of her arm. Its exuberant radiance reflected off its gleaming blade, breaking through the darkness and rekindling her confidence. Song Li gasped, something sparking within her tear-infused brain. That sword! Mimi glanced at her weapon, wondering what about it garnered Song Li's interest. You know about it? Not exactly, but I think I recall Ophelia saying something about it when she was juicing me up, how she was already beaten by it once. Mimi raised an eyebrow, curious. Did you happen to say anything else, perhaps something along the words light and girl? Song Li tapped her chin in thought, her eyes rolling as she dug into her mind. Now that I think about it, there was something else she mentioned. Lighty's surely to have that sword with her. If she brings it out, don't even hesitate to take it away from her. Mimi, I'm starting to think you shouldn't antagonize her any further with that stuff still on her, Rush whispered. And you think that's what I'm trying to fix? She whispered back harshly before turning back to Song Li. You want the sword so badly? Why don't you come and take me then? Why don't you come and take it from me then? She dared brashly.
Bad
idea?
Oh, you'll see.
Her opponent simply got back into a combative stance and uttered, gladly, before leaping forward, arms outstretched to strike again.
And the Spectral Reaper's got the right idea. This cat got insane.
Quite. If only appropriate music can play as you read through the fanfic. Like an ominous situation happens, eerie music plays. If only I have some money to get those damn royalty-free music. Or associated or production music.
Yeah, what can you do?
I'll pirate. Later. But Mimi was ready for her this time, sidestepping out of harm's way once more, and delivering a quick but effective slash across her side. As Song Li cried out in pain, clutching where she had been hit, she swung back with venom and vigor, thus beginning another long exchange between Song Li and Mimi, their blades clashing against each other in rapid succession, each strike being parried perfectly. Song Li was incredibly agile on her feet, dancing around most of Mimi's attacks like a twisted ballerina. Her attacks came at a much faster rate than Mimi could react, but the poor girl was not focused on hurting her attacker. She was aiming for the black tears, still driving her further onward. All of Mimi's swings were all aiming for Song Li's back, her sword coming ever so close to striking the source of the Anger Woman's continued fury. Why did I say furry? God. I think... he probably just muted his mic or something. But just when she thought her sword would connect, Song Li made a graceful leap away from her, followed by a swipe of her own towards Mimi's weapon. The two were deadlocked, both as agile as they were fierce. Their struggle lasted for another good while, until after another successful strike down Song Li's front, both sides eventually came to a head. Mimi's sword found itself caught between Song Li's knives, a stare down falling between the two. Mimi's amber eyes were locked in a glare with Song Li's wine-red eyes, neither one looking to back down. Mimi began to try and push forward, her feet struggling to get ahead into a better stance to gain control. With great resistance, she was able to get one foot in front of the other. Song Li forced a step back as the light force sword came ever so closer to her. Her pupils flashed a stinging violet again as she struggled to keep the determined Mimi at bay. "You can stop me? You couldn't even keep up with me," she berated Mimi, doing all she could to force her back. "I won't quit. I can't quit. No amount of those tears can stop my resolve," she shouted back, now locked in place where she stood, unable to push past Song Li's defense any further. The woman was far from done, though. "So naive you are. I don't care what kind of light drives you or what your resolve is. You won't reach Ophelia's garden. So help me, I finish you before any of your little friends, if I have to." That caused Mimi to pull back. The threat of harming upon her friends was not something she had planned on hearing, but it was just the sliver of weakness that Song Li needed, delivering a sharp kick to Mimi's gut, following by a clean swipe from her claws, slashing her target 2 ways down her chest.
Oh.
The attack also dislodged Mimi's sword from her grip, the weapon bouncing across the rocky earth and stopping a distance away from the fracas. With a new set of ugly claw marks covering her body, Mimi was now weakened enough to lose her footing, falling to the ground and clutching her wounds, struggling to stop the flow of blood. Without the light from her weapon, the ever-growing darkness also hit her hard, wearing on her condition further. Shadow Rush, who had tried to stay clear from the battle, now found himself galloping over toward Mimi, rolling her body onto the side and helping her to stop the bleeding. He was everything but collected. "Stay with me, kid. Don't you dare stop breathing. Just keep the pressure on those cuts." Mimi weakly lifted her head to face her companion, struggling to make small words. "Rush. Mimi, my sword." A hand flew to her temples, clutching them tightly as she tried to push her excruciating migraine out of place. "What about it? Why are you so focused on staying in the light?" Rush was flustered now and trying to figure out what Mimi was hiding from him. He would have pressed her further from what little strength she had left, but he was soon cut off from another threatening display from Song Li, sending him hiding behind the defeated girl. "I'm just as curious as you are, horse, but it looks like I've got her Achilles heel now." Her smile grew wide as she turned away from the two, striding casually over to Mimi's weapon. All Mimi could do at this point was futilely attempt to get back to her knees, urged on by Rush. "Darkness clouding my mind," she whimpered. I would have gone Metallica, but nah.
What?
I would have gone, "Darkness imprisoning me!"
Oh, one.
Yeah.
Clever. I see what you did.
Trying to fight back its hold against her mind. "Come on, Mimi, I know it hurts, but you can't let her get that sword!" Rush cried. Trying. Giggling all the way.
Spectral Reaper again. She's screwed.
Giggling all the way, Song Li stepped before the Light Force sword. His glimmering aura had dimmed from getting jarred from its owner, but she knew it was the only thing Mimi had against her. "Looks like a little dagger is mine, kid." She tossed in another taunting chuckle. "Now see what I can..." "Well, let's see what I can't do with your precious light." Or can do. Bending down, her hands clutched the hilt tightly, and with every ounce of muscle in her body, she lifted an end. Huh? She tugged again, certain she was giving it her all. "Stupid sword! Lift!" But no matter how hard she pulled on it, the sword seemed to be glued to the ground. She squatted down to gain better leverage on the hilt, but even then the weapon would not budge an inch.
Surprised?
Not? It's like the sword of the storm or something like that. As Song Li became red in the face from the force she was exerting, Rush looked on in confused astonishment. Why was she unable to lift the sword? It made no sense to him, even from a technical point of view. This is just getting too strange. How come she can't get that sword up? With her mind still being squeezed dry by the shadows around her, Mimi found a small spark of energy still within her, enough for her to push forward, up from the ground and onto one knee. Through her affliction, she uttered a realization. It's my sword, attuned only to me. No one else can use it but me. This was Mimi's chance, but she had no time to waste. Gritting her teeth, she pushed up, her body still shuddering from the dangerous loss of blood. One hand still clutching her head, she was able to finally get back up on her feet with one last nudge from Rush. Still unbalanced from the darkness's hold, it took her a moment and a stumble to realize her balance. She then began to step forward towards the sword and Sung Lee, albeit at an agonizing snail's pace. After a haughty struggle, Sung Lee found herself overwhelmed by the enchanted weapon's unbelievable weight, finally losing her grip and falling on her behind with an exasperated exclaim. She saw at the weapon for a second longer before pounding it to the ground with a clawed fist and springing it back up. She whirled back around to face Mimi, none too happy to see that she had gotten back up. Nonetheless, she was eager to finish her off. Fine then! If I must kill you with my bare hands, so be it! With an invigorating roar, Sung Lee threw her arms back and charged forward, knives outstretched and looking for blood once more. Poor Mimi was still inching forward through her suffering, barely able to look up and see the charge before her. But she was waiting this time. Clenching her fist, Mimi focused on remaining power she had left within her into a closed hand, feeling the light pulse through her arm. A small orb of light formed around her, faintly glimmering in the dark. But sure enough, her magic held firm through her concentration, without a second to lose either. Sung Lee had closed the gap between herself and Mimi incredibly quick, raising one hand above her in preparation for the kill shot. Mimi simply stood still, drawing her arm back and meeting Sung Lee's gaze. Rush covered his eyes in deep fear, not wanting to even imagine what could possibly follow. But his one thought was, if she dies, please let it be quick and painless. Yeah, Spectral, yeah, we'll be taking a break in a bit. Sung Lee leaped forward, clawed hand swinging down to meet Mimi's skull. But she would not even have a chance to connect as Mimi suddenly threw her own arm forward again. A charged punch connecting straight into Sung Lee's gut. The light energy Mimi had focused seemed to explode forward upon impact, bursting past its target as if it traveled through her. Mimi's eyes remained shut as her blow held firm. Sung Lee had completely frozen in place, arms falling out to her sides. A small pained squeak escaped her lips as Mimi released her fist, letting her drop down to her knees. Her opponent now disabled, Mimi shuffled a few more steps behind her, lifting the back of her shirt up to reveal the oozing tears once more. I'm ending this now. Conjuring up another ball of light, she let her temples go, letting her magic flow freely now. This orb gave off a fairly strong aura, giving Mimi's diminished condition. But she knew now what she had to do. Letting her determination fly, she slammed her palm onto Sung Lee's back, digging deep into the black tears that clung into her tightly. Sung Lee shut her eyes tight and wailed in agony, her torn mind getting cleansed from the inside out. The tears on her back seemed to whip every which way, and as they were forcibly ripped off by Mimi's light magic. The girl did not let her palm off for 1 second of the purge, wanting to make it quick. The black ooze seemed to scream with its victim, its grip on her loosening ever so easily now. Mimi could feel it. She was succeeding. Rush dared to lift one hoof from his eyes and peeked at the scene before him, quickly bringing it back down to seeing Mimi struggling with the tears. After several long minutes of grueling purification, Mimi felt another pulse from her hand, followed by a violent burst of black as the tears literally erupt from Song Li's back, sending both girls flying in opposite directions. Mimi found herself crashing onto another rock, her body now fully drained of any strength she might have held on to. With her energy now expunged, she found herself drifting off into the drawl of unconsciousness. Last thing she saw was Shadowrush jumping from his cowardice and rushing over to Song Li, trying to get her up as an extra aid. And now I need a break. I need to finish off that other burger.
No rush.
And so far we're on page 24. We're over the halfway mark. That's amazing.
For me, it's saying page 19 because I've been following along.
For me, we're past the halfway mark, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. You will get this done tonight. I honestly don't know.
I don't know. We got about a half hour.
Yeah.
And yeah, for Spectral Reaper, let me finish. Let me deal with the burger, and then we're continuing.
Mimi fucked shit up. Oh, huh.
It must be on the delay. Damn, this recording has been going on for a little over 2 hours now.
How would I help Mimi? I'm the one who wrote the story, Reaper.
I think he meant Shadowrush.
Oh. Oh! I can't help but keep watching the sequel you made to the Pink Amina Surgeon Simulator thing.
Murder Shy?
Yeah. I always have expecting you to do with Pink Amina again, though.
Might be with somebody else. I'm thinking all the Grimdark ponies I can think of.
Rest maybe Researcher Twilight and Rainbow Factory Dash?
Maybe. Maybe also thinking of, I don't know, maybe Cheerly's Garden, maybe?
I digress.
But I want to get through the heart surgery before I do any of those.
Yeah.
Because
trust me, when you get to the kidney transplant, you are going to have hell.
It's already hell going through the heart transplant. It's a little difficult than what it was in the prototype. Digital Railroader is a little exciting. He ended up playing with the mods of Fractured Loyalty and Factory Rainbow Factory Dash.
Huh.
Yeah, the dash pad and all. excuse me. There we go. I have a screenshot of, well, even had a screenshot of Fractured Loyalty putting a bullet through his brain. Sounds awful, but it said it was an honor. I might try that. See if I can get a hold of when the dashpad gets on TF2. Alright. Oh dear. They're italicized a bit.
Time for another dream sequence. Or flashback, whatever you want to call it.
I don't know. When she awoke, Mimi found herself within a place she could not comprehend. Before her was a large city, full of nothing but skyscrapers and tall buildings that stretched as far as she could see. The sun shone brilliantly down upon her, and a city far brighter than she had ever experienced. Oh. She stood up with a small park. She stood within a small park that faced the city, the grass lively and full of color. Looking up, she marveled at the many buildings that loomed over her. The sun reflected off their many windows, creating a dazzling light show that was bliss to the eyes. Then she saw it, a pair of figures bolting across the tops of buildings. Her eyes watched the skyline closely as she intently observed the two dashing all across the cityscape like free runners, not even losing an ounce of their momentum. Listening intently, she swore she could hear the faintest trace of laughter coming from their direction. Mimi watched as they slid down the steep decline of one building, soaring down through the air and landing with a roll on the ground below, fairly close to her. The giggles never ceased to end as they looked to each other. Mimi hastily walked over to the two of them to get a closer look. When she got within a safe distance, she saw them. It was him, accompanied by Song Li. His body was still shrouded, his features unrecognizable. The two of them seemed to be reveling in how much they've enjoyed their little daredevil routine. That's the most fun I ever had in years, Mimi could have sworn she heard Song Li call him by some other name, but from where she stood she couldn't hear it well. I could say the same. It's been long since I've been able to just let go and fly freely through here, he replied. I never got you your name, my dear. His response came as a hearty giggle. Just call me Song Li. It's a strange name, but that's what makes me unique. The two embraced, smiling. Mimi could only watch for a moment longer before her vision faded back to white. When her vision returned again, she found herself back on the mountains, but things were much different. The cloud was no longer hanging atop the summit, at least not yet, Mimi thought. The only other atop of the plateau now was Song Li, who in the midst of stretching and comforting her body in many ways, she had not a care in the world. The bliss was soon interrupted by a large bubble puddling of ooze forming behind the flexible woman and gaining shape. Mimi wanted to scream, but being she was in a recollection of Song Li's memories, her words carried no volume. From the middle of the gunk, a feminine body rose, dripping and seething with deadly beauty. Ophelia. Yes. When Song Li turned around from a backwards bend that she made, that looks like a child's play, she was immediately met by her unwelcome visitor. She gasped, already knowing what was coming. Still can't let him go, could you? Maybe I can, maybe I can't, the figure replied. All I know is, I need a little favor from you. Song Li looked cautious, knowing what kind of situation might follow. And how can I possibly help you? There's this rather annoying little girl coming this way. No doubt she's looking to find me. You mean the same little girl that's helped restore Kai's forest? Silhouette quivered in anger. So you do know about her then? Only until you brought it up, and no, that's all I know. Song Li was quickly made to regret opening her mouth. The silhouette jumped forward, clamping onto her as long, sleek tendrils emerged from its back. They wrapped around Song Li, slathering their dripping contents over her back. All poor Song Li could do was whimper in resistance, her brain being taken over. Now listen here, Song Li. Whether you like it or not, you're going to prevent that kid from advancing any further. I won't have her stop me, not after I failed once with her little lady friend. Song Li could not find a proper response, only able to let out small gasps of breath as she found herself bending to the figure's will now. At last her pupils began to glow a stinging violet, a smile slowly forming. What did you say, Oops? Song Li's words spelled out in an equally sultry tone. That's a good girl. The silhouette let go of Song Li, slowly dissipating back into shadows. One more thing, Song Li. Lady's sure to have this sword with her. Hurt me pretty bad last time I tried to face her with it. If she brings it out, don't ever hesitate to get it away from her. As the shadow faded, so too did Mimi's vision, as she was brought back to reality. And wake up! While she couldn't see very much after her experience, she could certainly feel something, or rather someone, roughly patting her cheek. When the blur cleared from her vision, she could now see who it was. Standing above her was Song Li, Shadow Rush right by her side. The former was trying to further rouse Mimi from her slumber as the latter looked on in worriment. Is that a real word?
It should be.
Oh, it's not. Well, my spell check didn't. Well, my spell check didn't go off on that word. Come on, kid. Don't you ever think about downing me? Atta girl, Song Li said sweetly. Now just try to get up slowly. You look pretty worn. As Mimi's focus came back to her, she now clearly saw Song Li's hands, still skinless. This is enough to jolt her back up on her feet and against the rock, her breathing hiking up in fear. Wait, it's alright! I'm not gonna hurt you again! Song Li reassured, slowly approaching Mimi as she pointed to a writhing puddle of blackness behind them all. You've already made sure of that! A gentler smile formed on her face. It was enough to calm Mimi down, albeit slightly. She still hesitated to step any closer to Song Li, even when the woman stopped advancing. She looked to Rush, who seemed to be frowning as if he thought Mimi still thought Song Li to be hiding something. Song Li, however, knew what to say. What now? Look at the chat. Jeez, why you dashboard spam?
Oi.
Somebody see what he's talking about.
Let's get back to this, yeah.
I know I've scared you before, but if it weren't for your little pony friend here, I wouldn't have known how to fix you up. Daring to look beside her, Mimi gasped when she saw her Life Force sword sitting next to her feet. She was very gently picking it up, looking it over, and also noticing that she and Song Li's wounds, despite remaining as deep scars, have healed as well. How? It wasn't easy, Rush answered. Neither Song Li or I could even move it, so we had to drag you closer to it in order for its power to actually work. I'm just happy you're able to break Ophelia's hold over me. That was fun, to say the least. Mimi winced. So your own consciousness is still behind those tears? Mm-hmm. Even I wasn't strong enough to break the spell until you and Shadow Rush strolled right into my home. Looking back at Song Li, then at the sword, her last tinge of nervousness slowly vanished. She called the sword away, now willing to approach the woman. As Mimi came within her reach, Song Li then pulled her suddenly into a tight hug. Mimi squeaked in surprise. I was not expecting such a display of thanks. Thank you so much for saving me. I don't know what I've done if it weren't for your efforts, Song Li cried over enthusiastically. Shadowrush interjected. Song Li, I know you're happy, but I don't think she can breathe. Song Li looked down to see Mimi squeaking some more, whereupon she immediately released her grip. Sorry, got a little carried away, she chuckled innocently. It's okay, I'm used to it, Mimi recalled the massive hug she had received from Owen when first being introduced to Sora's group. Shadowrush rejoined Mimi's side, the two of them simply looking at Song Li as she looked back at them intently. Mimi slowly returned the smile, knowing she had done well once again. But then she noticed something else amazing. The dark cloud that had hung over them had now lightened up significantly, though still hung over them. Well, it's a start, Mimi concluded shyly. Indeed it is, Song Li, but I think I know just what to do, if you both follow me. Song Li began towards a smaller incline up the mountain, making a gesture for Mimi and rushed to follow. They both willingly do so, sprinting briefly to catch up with her. As Mimi walked by Song Li's side, she was then questioned. I didn't think I ever caught your name. Mimi, you've already known Shadowrush since he helped you. Of course. I'm still grateful that the both of you came along, you know, especially with what you're capable of. Mimi blushed, flattered. Thank you. It was he who tasked me with fixing all this after all. Hearing that name caused Song Li to gasp deeply, knowing what she meant. My God, him? He's really still alive? Mimi smiled with a small smile. He might be weakened, but I can still feel him. He's still with us, I know it. Song Li simply beamed with joy at this revelation. I just knew he was still alive. He couldn't have just vanished completely on us. She laughed along with Mimi, the two finally connecting. As Mimi looked down at Song Li's hands, her smile faded. So, do those hurt? Song Li looked at Mimi oddly for a second before figuring out what she meant. Holding her hands up, her upbeat look dropped momently as well. Not really. It's not as bad as you think. Mimi winced as she said that, wondering just how it felt. Nevertheless, she asked, how did he even get like that? Her question
here
got...
comes his. Go on.
Her question got a deep sigh from Song Li, who looked up towards the horizon. The darkness had infested the land past where they stood, completely shrouding it in shadows. Mimi thought she saw a sad look from her escort's face. Did she do that to you? Ophelia? Not her, Song Li's response was snippy and short. He did. Mimi asked, that hooded figure? No! Song Li froze mid-sentence. She knew exactly what the truth was, but to tell it to Mimi would less likely shatter the poor girl's hopes of ever achieving her goal. She had no choice. She had to lie to cover herself, saying yes. And how did he do that? How did he do that? Mimi's reply had a small quiver to it. Before Song Li could continue her story, Shadowrush intervened. Well, you see, this was long before the four even split up. See, when he was... A sharp jab from Song Li silenced him, whereupon he shot a glare at her as she whispered fiercely to his ear. You want her to know the truth before she even reaches that hooded man? This immediately caused Rush to double back, also unwilling to let Mimi down that much. What I mean to say was, you know, those glaives that Kai in the hooded figure you've seen have. What?
Glaive is how it's pronounced.
Glaives. You know those glaives that Kai in the hooded figure you've seen have? Mimi gave a small nod. Well, before he vanished, Song Li was to be given 2 glaives of her own to add some deadly finesse to her already acrobatic style. But when the two of them failed to realize was that the glaive was crafted heavily with dark magic, and Song Li isn't as resistant to such forces as the rest of the four are. So, a few seconds after the glaives were placed on her, the magic within them painfully fused them into her hands. It was quite a sight, I gotta say. Ooh, well, getting a little relevancy.
What?
Sorry. Painful image. Slowly continued, unsheathing the knives within her hands. As you see, because of what happened, I can now bring these little babies out whenever I need them. And does it hurt at all? Maybe questioned. If you have those two apparatuses crafted solely of shadow fused into your body, when you lose all sensation to those areas afterwards, would you think it hurts? Song Li replied, throwing a knowing, indignant look her way. No. Song Li sighed again, spent. Look, I'm sorry if I've been short, Mimi. You have to understand, though, that we all still remember when he was around. Now that he's vanished on us, everything's changed so much, we struggle just to remain the good time. Just to remember the good times. I know. I'm just eager to bring him back as you are. Rush, too. Her companion's response was, you know it. Why else would I miss being called his little buddy? His? I thought it was her.
That was Rush.
I don't know. I was thinking, bleh.
Yeah.
Something came across my mind, but then again, ow, man, I need it.
Easy there.
Just a little. There we go. Nearly done. We got about 10 minutes. I just had to ask though, Song Li. I was hit by one of the members when it was out cold, and I heard him call you his dear. Were you and him like... Oh heavens, no, child, Song Li replied hastily. We may have had our little moments, but never did we have anything close to that. I was more of, shall we say, onto him. I always had something to say to him when he needed guidance. He needed advice, Shadowrush bumped. I was certain he was a wise one, speaking as his companion. Suddenly his tone changed to something more serious sounding as she turned to Rush. Smarts aren't everything, you know. He was wise beyond his age, but even the smartest people need the occasional point in the right direction. Right, Rush doubled back. Suddenly turned back to Mimi as they continued upward. So, he actually sent you not just to find me, but the rest of the four as well. Well, I had to say, you're on a roll, Mimi. But considering the other two you have yet to encounter, well, I pray that you're just as sluggy with them as you were with myself and Kai. One problem with that, Song Li, I've already met them both. Sort of, I mean. Song Li threw an intrigued look her way, wanting to know more as Mimi continued. Ophelia I've gotten acquainted with. She overshadowed my friend Sora in an attempt to get her strength back. The other, he came to me in a vision with a warning that he'd be keeping his eye on me. So you've already made your presence known. With another couple of steps, the three reached the top of the summit. Their path gave way to a smooth, earthly platform that Song Li called her escape. So all we need to do now is show them that you're not down and out yet. A long campfire stood, as remained still smoldering from a previous simmering, but what caught Mimi's attention beside the elevated view was a well-crafted instrument on the other end of the platform. It was a bass guitar. Its body was the finest mahogany polished wood, strings good and thick as a baby's arm. Mimi was astonished by the mere sight. Is it really yours? Of course, no one else up here but me. But me, right? She chuckled, striding over to the instrument and picking it up. You didn't really think I was the only one who carried one of those guitars, did you, Mimi? Rush queried. Well, no, I don't think everyone at the fort had one. To my recollection, the only other one I believe had one was Ophelia. Haven't seen any other kind of instrument that belongs to the last one.
I think right there I'll have you stop. Maybe finish the rest tomorrow or some other time this week, because I can... Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
We'll call this a nice stopping point. Page
Exactly.
29.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I think I know where we are now.
You left off. I believe I stopped you right after Shadow Rush said, to my recollection, the only other one I really have had one was Ophelia. That's where I stopped you last night. Remember that?
Yeah, I think so. There we go.
Alrighty then.
Let's resume.
Let us continue on. The second half of Chapter 3.
Song Lee rejoined both Mimi and Rush, lightly fingering the frets on their bass. Let me just show you my latest melody, if I may. Mimi and Rush looked at each other, figuring it wouldn't hurt to let their quest hold for a moment. Mimi stood back with her hands held behind her back, waiting. We might be able to get this done by tonight, who knows? Song Lee's tune began with a descending slide up the frets without resistance. Then her fingers flew across the strings like slender butterflies, making an array of deep, sultry notes. Closing her eyes and smiling, she lost herself in her own groove, feeling the music flow through, in and out of her like a brisk summer wind. As she continued playing, Mimi began to feel an odd tingling in her body. As Rush looked on, a string of sparkles began to encircle her, hovering close to her old wounds. The same was happening to Song Lee, and as her bass continued to play, both the girls' wounds looked to be magically healing before them. Mimi's eyes widened in both shock and awe, watching as her battle scars patched themselves up to the tune before her. With one last tremolo, Song Lee released the neck of her guitar, letting loose one last wave of healing. As the exuberance faded, both the girls stood in front of each other, now perfectly cleansed of their wounds. Mimi's hands flew to the spot where she had been clawed at, where she felt nothing but smooth, unblemished skin. She was restored.
It's a miracle.
Miracle of music!
Well, if you couldn't tell, by the way, that's another reference to Brutal Legend, if you did not know. Because in the in-game, bass happens to be the one thing that can heal, well, almost any wound. Spoilers. It's weird, but yeah, it works.
Shadow Rush was astonished at how quickly it had taken. Wow, it's been so long since I've seen a healing melody like that before. Song Lee simply laughed in response. Nothing heals quite like a good bass, eh? Mimi did not reply right away. Still fascinated at how Song Lee's music had worked on her, she pawed at her skin for a moment longer before realizing she was being spoken to. Oh, sorry, you just surprised me with how quickly you worked there. No worries, I got that a lot before. The two girls then looked up to the cloud above them, their glee withering again. To rid the mountains of its presence completely would surely benefit the land. The only question was, how? Hey! Mimi's shrill exclamation garnered both Song Lee and Shadow Rush's full attention. I think I know how we can fix this. Song Lee, are you good with duets? The idea caused Song Lee's eyes to twinkle with joy. It's been quite a while since the last time I ever jammed with someone. You play? Just started, so to speak. With a wave, Mimi had already conjured her guitar up, lightly grasping it for the bedazzled Song Lee to see. My, A beautifully crafted guitar to go with a beautifully crafted sword. Mimi shielded from her gaze momentarily, smiling. If roaring for Kai, I wouldn't have found it, but if we played together, then maybe its magic could be intensified. A duet, you say? Songli chirped. I'm all for it, if it'll bring the light. Allow me to start it off then. Taking a proud stance, Songli started off with a simple 4-note melody. Her restorative aura was faint at first, but it began to glow brighter with her playing. Soon Mimi joined in, playing at her own pace to match with her lead. It took them a moment to find their timing together, but soon both guitar players were playing in synchronous harmony. Their music began to literally work its magic, branching out from their instruments in long wisps of light, encircling the air around them like ribbons in the wind. As their song branched out into something bigger, their magic only bloomed, spiraling upwards and filling the atmosphere with a new exuberance. And the only thing Shadowrush himself could do was stand back and laugh as happily as he could, taking in the wonderful sight and the sound before him. But a ways down from the summit, another group was slowly spiraling up. Sora's group was still running at a breakneck speed, trying to reach the top of the plateau and find their friend. But having seen now that the haze has cleared significantly, their pace had slowed down a bit. Sora and Kai took the head of the group once more, but as they approached the midway point of the slope, Osaka heard the familiar sound of music again. Ooh, another show? Didn't think the weather was right yet. Sakaki looked back at her as they continued running. Look up, Osaka! The sky's clearing up! Osaka obeyed, as did the rest of the group. When they saw a new beam of light shooting upwards into the cloud, their hopes shot up with it. Little Mimi ahead, quick Explosion Man! The prospect immediately pepped everyone back up again, their long sprint resuming as they neared ever so closer to the top. In her mind, Sora could only imagine how Mimi was doing so well up there. Come on, girl, you wanted to catch up with her that bad, didn't you? Kai shouted playfully to Sora, who was already more than happy to put some more zip in her step. As they pressed onward, Mimi and Song Li stood by each other, their jam having spread out far beyond their reach. The song had reached its conclusion with the last of their magic shooting up into the sky into one final burst of energy, which thundered upwards as the heavens opened, the sun finally able to shine its comforting glow upon them once again. Both girls and their little pony friend stood proud atop the summit, basking in the warmth of the light around them. Little Mimi, though, couldn't be happier at how she found her natural harmony. That was amazing, Song Li. Can you believe the two of us did this? Hey, you're the one who had the idea to play together. Song Li playfully jabbed Mimi's shoulder, eliciting another small chuckle. So really, I should be thanking you, little Mimi. When Rush rejoined her side, he only just noticed that the smile on Mimi's face grew wider with glee. With their task done, the trio began their way back down to the plateau below, Mimi making idle banter about where to go next. So you've got your home and your peace of mind back. What's left for me to do here? Up here, nothing really. I think you've done all you can to fix the place up, Song Li said. There's one other thing you can do for me, though. As they set foot back on flat ground, she pointed to the puddle of black tears still oozing in place within the rock. See those tears? I still know where that accursed substance came from. She led Mimi to a farther side of the plateau, pointing to a nasty patch of dark land that seemed not too far from a distance from the mountains. That bit of taint over there, that's where Ophelia's realm is. You still want to set her straight from what she's done to your friends, right? Mimi painfully recalled what the spiteful girl in question had done. Had it not been for her taking Sora's mind and berating her friends, she would have told Song Li otherwise. Right. She's still one of the four, but she needs a good lesson. There you go, Song Li roughly patted her shoulder. You can do this, Mimi. With that sword of yours, you can easily get through that shadow. Just get in there, face her down, and show her what for. You make it sound like it's going to be easy with someone like Ophelia, Rush said uneasily. Never said it would be easy. Oafs hold a great power in that demented little world of hers. But if what Mimi's shown Kai and I thus far is any indication, she might just meet her match against Mimi. With such confidence placed upon her, Mimi could not help but feel that she was being made out to be more than she already was. That she would not be able to progress much further upon encountering the woman of her friend's affliction. Feeling the energy within her still lingering, she put on a more serious look, all traces of worry vanishing. Alright, I can do this. I can face her. You'll be okay, Mimi. You've got our support and courage. Shadow Rush in the sky is by your side. This will be a fight you can win. Rush nudged her legs to show Song Li's words would hold strong with them. Her mood brightened again, Mimi conjuring up her sword, preparing for what's to come. Alright, Ophelia. Here I come. With a wind-up, Mimi bolted down the mountains in a stream of dazzling light, leaving her companion's head spinning and in the dust. Once he stood himself back up, he only just noticed Mimi dashing down the road below, not stopping for a second. "Oh, come on! Wait for me!" And he took off down the slope, galloping as fast as his little legs can carry him. Watching the pair rocket off into the distance, Song Li simply stood back with a hand on her hip and a grin formed on her lips. You got this, light girl. She's got nothing on you now. Her thoughts were soon cut off by the sound of running footsteps making their way onto her plateau below. When she turned round to see who her new arrivals were, she was greatly surprised to see Sora, Kai, and their group catching their breath, with the exception of the ever-energetic Tomo and Explosions. Looking around, Sora was treated to a much different view than she had anticipated. The skies here were clearer, and the sun was back up, shining down as it should have been. But for the second time in a row, they have seemingly just missed Mimi. She wanted to curse out loud for being late again, but knew better than to be so brash in front of her friends, especially with Kai in their ranks now. Instead, she turned to the group, checking on each member of the party individually. Of them all, only Sakaki, Owen, and Jimmy were the most tuckered out, but assured Soa that they would be okay. She just rode over to Kai, who was just dusting herself off. "Well, we missed her again," Kai said, rather downbeat. "Isn't that what I said the first time?" Sora replied, confused. "I was the least expecting we'd catch a small glimpse of her this time around, you know. You were the one who wanted to catch up with her after all." "Hey, at least we know she was here. Sky's cleared up now, hasn't it?" Sora clapped her hands over her mouth, astonished at what she said. Kai, on the other hand, smirked. "Baby steps. Baby steps." Well,
it's progress, so
slowly working this way. Sakaki then brought up the pointer for them all. "Well, we're up here now. Might as well just enjoy the view for a bit." As the group mumbled and nodded in agreement, they were soon greeted by the familiar feminine figure dropping from the alcove above, landing on her feet before them. Abruptly shocked, they were all relaxed when they saw who it was, standing up. "Well, save a spot for me, then." Kai was the first to shout out in joy. "Oh my gosh, Song Li! Kai!" The two women ran to each other, both leaping to each other's arms and swinging about, overjoyed to be reunited. With the others watching this event, Jimmy silently said to Sora, "Man, even you didn't act that giddy when Mimi saved ya." He then found himself pulled in close by the scruff of his shirt, Sora glaring daggers at him. "Next time you say anything about Mimi and I to anyone, I will show you what you look like on the inside." Terrified, Jimmy gulped nervously. "Right, won't happen again. Just a slip of the tongue, you know."
I had to slip that in.
Well, shipping hard, are we? Your own fanfic, nonetheless.
What can I say? I'm a person of many interests, so...
Releasing him, her gaze was returned to both Kai and Song Li. The two were laughing like schoolgirls, and the others were soon joining them. Kai could not contain herself over finding her friend again. My God, how long has it been? Only longer than I can recall. She pulled Kai into a tight embrace. Oh, it's so good to see you again, and you guys as well. The others all crowded around the two, trying to get in a hug or a good word. Such a gathering had to have been sane to believe. Excuse me. Such a gathering had to have been seen to believe. With their numbers joined together, they stepped over to the nearby outlook to view the land from a higher perspective. With no other sound but the wind blowing past them, it was one of the choice times they had to just forget about all the corruption and the hate that was fluent in this world, and stand by each other as friends, as family. The sun above, in its rightful place, further helped to make the experience much more feel good.
You of that gorilla's son.
With tranquility restored, Kai remembered that there was still something they had to do. Song Li, it is really nice to see you again, but if you haven't already guessed, we're all here for a reason. Well, I was just definitely expecting, but Sora and her posse, they were the real surprise. Well, you see, Song Li, Tomo continued, there's this gal we're looking for. Kai already ran her past us, so we were hoping you'd seen her. Not Artemis, she's a girl with a light imbued magic sword and a little black pony by her side. So didn't I expect to hear that someone else was with Mimi? No one knew quite how to respond. Ultimately, it was Sasaka who brought the silence. Little black pony? Any chance he had a cute little red hat on his head? Why, yes, it was quite funny watching him trying to catch up with his escort. With this new information in tow, Sora turned to Kai and addressed her in a tone that was almost accusatory. Or however you say it. You knew Shadowrust was with her and you never told us? Well, I thought you guys were only after Mimi. I didn't think that little tidbit would matter that much. Everyone shush! Song Li's order was quick and to the point. Almost immediately, everyone had quieted down and was looking directly at her. Now, there's just no need to spoil our little happy moment after we all just got reacquainted, is there? Silence rang, but the message seemed to get across. Yes, Shadowrust is with Mimi. To my understanding, he was found right before Mimi happened upon Kai, and is accompanying her as we speak to aid her in her quest. But there's no need to make petty arguments over that matter. She's got a point, Sakaki continued. But if Mimi was really here, then where did that cloud that we just saw before come from? Yeah, that must have been a real downer to your mood, eh? Jamie added. Song Li, ignoring that last comment, continued her story. You could say, I suppose, but that cloud was bare shade compared to what else I was dealing with. Little did anyone know that behind Song Li, the puddle of black tears had formerly clouded her mind was not finished yet. As she continued to talk, the tears began to writhe and bubble, gradually reshaping themselves to their own accord. The substance rose up slowly, taking on a very feminine form.
Yeah.
See, when Mimi and Rush happened upon me, I was rather, shall we say, moody. Moody? Kai questioned uneasily. How moody are we talking? Clapping her skinless hands together, Song Li took a deep breath and, with her eyes closed and reminiscent, continued, well, let's just say that someone wasn't happy with her influence waning on you all and decided she tried to use me to stop Mimi. The group shuddered collectively. Something stirred again in their minds and given different reactions. Owen held Chia close to him. Jimmy graced and looked all around aimlessly, and all but Sora seemed to want to press the matter further. I have a strong feeling I should know, but who? I'll give you 3 guesses, but you only need 1.
Surprise!
A cold, venomous voice. A familiar voice, no less. Just the mere sound of it brought everyone to a stop. They were all reluctant to face the source, but with no other option in their heads, they had to proceed. Song Li slowly turned around behind her. the others all either looking over her shoulder or sliding over a few steps to get a better view. Safe to say they were all right to be scared upon seeing the source of the voice. Standing before them all, tears dripping from her figure, was Ophelia. Her stance was relaxed, yet radiated anger. Her presence caused Chio to cling to Owen tighter, whimpering. "Easy now, Chio," he reassured, placing a comforting hand on her. Nothing bad's gonna happen, I hope." Feeling the grip on her anger starting to loosen, Kai's gaze turned red instantly, or instantaneously, and through gritted teeth she snarled deeply. "Ophelia. My, so angry, Kai," her instigator said sarcastically. "I dread ever having to face you or your friends. Whatever will I do?" Her taunt trailed off into mocking laughter, further angering Kai. Song Li and Sora stepped over to her side to try to restrain her, both with a non-intimidated look as well. Sora started it off. "So, still resorting to overshadowing others to get your dirty work done, are you? I guess I shouldn't be too surprised in your case, but how are you even doing this? When you're alone in a deep, dark place of your own, making for so long, you learn some new tricks. I've gained better control over the tears, and it's allowed me to leave that little realm of mine in more ways than I can imagine." She spun around in place, arms swayed out and showing off. "Even this form of mine before you now, all tears, never even had to leave my inner sanctum to pull it off." "Never took you as the cocky tiger, Ophs," Kai snarled. "Why not just face us like a real woman?" "Ooh.
It's on now."
"Because I don't need to show myself to prove that I'm stronger than a lot of you." Her blunt response elicited another attempt at a lunge from Kai, which was quickly held back by her two human restraints. "Alright then, Miss Gloom and Doom," Tomo shouted out. "If you're so big and brave, why'd you even show up here in the first place, Ophelia's shade advanced towards everyone, delivering her warning clear with malice. "Since Leidy's cast aside my attempt at sparing her a terrible fate, I figured I'd deliver the same message to you all. Come any closer to my realm, and the only thing you'll find is a quick end to your sad little lives." The shade looked down at the little Chio, still trying to hide herself behind her looming guardian. "But maybe you like that, would you, Chio? Just a fun little dip in my pool?" He laughed heavily at his own joke, bringing another whimper from Chio with it. Having had enough, Sora released Kai and jumped between the shade and Owen, her bow staff keeping the menacing conglomerate of black tears at bay. "Don't you dare speak to my friends like that again, Ophelia. I won't have you taking them, as you've already tried with me." The shade mockingly threw his hands up, pretending to be frightened. "Ooh, I'm so scared. You're going to give me splinters. Really now, Sora, you wouldn't hurt something that you shared a common trait with? Huh?" Ooh. She lowered her staff, all put by what she just heard. The same response followed from both Jimmy and Osaka, especially equally intrigued. "I can feel your anger, Sora. It's all pent up, right here." The shade poked Sora right where her heart was, making her gasp. "You and I, we have very little control over our anger, it seems. But if you just come under my wing for some time..." "Shut up!" A piercing shing sounded off as Kai broke from Song Li's hold, thoroughly angered and wanting blood. With her glaive outstretched, she charged towards Ophelia's shade in clear view of everyone, taking an infuriating swing. Whereas it normally would have made a solid blow, Kai's swing only discombobulated the shade, tears flinging up into the air and all about. The group was forced to disperse as the tear flew from the root, reassembling themselves right in front of Kai, a slimy tendril slapping her hard across the head and knocking her down as the shade regained its form. Like I said, the tears are mind control in ways you couldn't imagine. Before it could land another strike on the downed Kai, the shade's form shot back up, stiffening. Sora was preparing for a swing of her own when she froze at this sudden act. She was regrettably wary as the shade turned back to look at the darkness off into the horizon. A small glimmer could be seen shooting down the road far from the distance. It hissed out its words in anger. She approaches my garden. Whipping her head back to face the group, she spat out, "I'll deal with you losers later." Just as she attempted to take off, a shrill cry of "Banzai!" rang out, catching almost everybody's attention. In the last moment of dismay, Tomo had blindly grabbed Explosion Man and tossed him at Ophelia's side. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just laughing too hard. Okay.
There, man.
Alright, let me start over. In the last moment of disarray, Tomo had blindly grabbed Explosion Man and tossed him at Ophelia's shade, where he latched on tight to its slimy figure and chuckled deviously. "Slime Girl is special, friend! Slime Girl goes blue now!" Second he uttered those words, everyone else made a logic choice and dropped to the ground, covering their heads. They did so just in time. Explosion Man's body was already crackling with explosive energy as he continued to chuckle like the madman he was. Unable to break from his hold, the shade simply stood there and uttered flatly, "I hate you so much." With a vibrant burst of brilliance, Explosion Man detonated himself with a loud whooping noise, sending bits and pieces of the shade flying across all the rocks and splattering upon impact. The flippant madman spun around in the air, gracefully landing back on his feet with a chuckle and a proclamation. "We're done! Professionally!"
We're done professionally.
Rising back to their feet, Sora's group was shaken, but thankfully unharmed. Kai, however, was still none too happy about being shot down by her former friend. Springing back to her feet, her glaive blade shot out once more with another shing. "I am not waiting for you guys. I'm gonna rip her apart before she even touches Mimi." She dashed off down the mountains the same way Mimi had, refusing to slow down for a moment's breath. Not wanting herself to get hurt, the others were forced to begin their long pursuit after her. The way down the mountain was thankfully not as treacherous as the way up, but on several occasions the decline in the slope nearly slipped up several of them, notably Owen and Sakaki. Both Sora and Song Lee led the charge, trying to maintain a pace balanced enough for the friends to keep up with them. With them focused on running, the two looked at each other with heavily worried looks. They were completely uncertain what they were getting themselves into now, but knew that whatever lied in wait for them, they had to be there for Mimi. All looking forward, they charged off towards the darkness, with only their determination and friendship pressing them onwards.
I should definitely say that was a bit of a cacophony.
Ugh.
Well, let's see how little Mimi is managed.
Quite. Miles off into the shadow, Mimi's sword had kept the growing blackness at bay, illuminating the way for her and keeping her safe. After running for so long, though, she had finally come to rest at her destination, a large rock formation in the shape of a crooked skull. Open-mouthed and toothless, its maw gave way to a path that led forward and downwards into the darkness. Only the vilest denizens of this world could possibly consider this sort of place home. Behind her, Shadow Rush had finally caught up to her, panting heavily and his pace very wobbly. In between pins, he managed to blurt out, "Man, you really need to learn to slow down a bit, Mimi." "Sorry, Rush. I guess I kinda underestimated myself again." No. There's no worries, just... My god, are you a speedy little thing. Mimi flashed a cheeky smile. Before the two of them looked back to the long, winding path before them. They stared into its seemingly never-ending length, both fascinated and a little scared at what sort of secrets and surprises laid in wait within Ophelia's twisted abode. So this is where Ophelia is, Mimi asked. Yep, Rush replied. You sure you're ready for this, Mimi? We could be walking to a point of no return here. I've got to do this, Shadow Rush. Not just for him and his world, but for my friends. I won't let her hurt them again. The two looked at each other and nodded, their minds made up. Without any further hesitation, the two began a hurried jog through the entrance and deep down the path. The light force sword provided sufficient light for the two to see forward, but even then the darkness was almost too thick ahead of them, and they were forced to stick together. Further down into the abode, the duo was surprised to begin seeing several Come again?
Candelabras.
Candelabras? What?
Like those little candlestick things on, like a rod?
I think I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
The duo was surprised to begin seeing several candelabras hung down the path. They glowed with purple flame, giving off an eerie illumination. Deeming it enough, Mimi recalled her sword, allowing herself and Rush to be coated in violet light. Their pace slowed to a brisk walk as they looked all about in the cavern-like corridor. It was tall but relatively narrow, and there seemed to be a faint trace of black tears on sunspots on the walls. Perhaps remnants in some past overflow that gave way to this hole, Mimi thought.
Maybe.
You know, I don't think I ever properly asked you this, Rush suddenly spoke up. But why are you so scared of the darkness? You are the embodiment of light, aren't you? It's a bit more odd than you think, Rush. When I heard him in the forest, he told me that shadow couldn't fully kill me. But if I spend too much time in it, it starts to wear on me, both mentally and physically. It's why my sword helped me for a bit back when I fought Song Li. Huh. Figured he had something to do with it.
Shocker.
Well, Mimi, he was very bright, believe me. But he always had a habit of making the strangest handicaps for most of his creations. Not that they would really cope with them, but they were still strange regardless. So you're saying that I'm just a strange girl because of that? Rush's head shot up to look at her, regretful. Oh, no, I didn't mean like that, Mimi. I was just saying the fact that you had that little handicap of yours just came off as strange to me. I never meant like a discrimination or something. Alright then, Mimi said, uncertain. The brief conversation brought them closer to the end than they thought. When Mimi and Rush looked back to the path, they saw the end of the corridor. Ahead there was a wide entrance, 2 braziers on either side with roaring purple flames. Past it was what looked to be a larger room, purple haze shrouding it slightly. Rush knew it had to be where they had to go. Well, this is it, Mimi. She's likely to be past this last stretch. And I'm ready, Rush. Let's get her. Quickly speaking, she darted forward, leaving Rush in the dust again. This time, however, he wasn't so keen on letting her go. Mimi, wait! You don't know she might be waiting for you! He cried as he tried to catch up with her. But only a few feet from the entrance, Mimi was forced to skid to a halt when a massive gush of black tears suddenly erupted from the ground before her. A pool formed at her feet, forcing her back another few steps. Shadow Rush had stopped in place a short distance behind her. All he could do was watch from out of the thrashing, swirling puddle. The same figure they both knew slowly arose from within, arms crossed, and a figurative glare radiating it off it. She was certainly not happy with her new visitors. Mimi was only able to utter one name. Ophelia.
Jeez, piss, people.
That's it, light girl. Now you're really getting on my nerves. So I'm going to give you one last chance. One last goddamn chance to drop this whole ridiculous destiny of yours. If you turn tail now and just run back home, I might just consider sparing your stupid little bunch of friends. But so help me, if you continue to pursue me any further, I promise with every fire of my being that I will break you! Those words flew out to Mimi like figurative daggers, all attempting to drive her back to whence she came. This time Mimi winced ever so slightly at the force behind those words, looking back to Rush. He had a rather desperate look on his face, as if begging Mimi to not tempt the angered woman any more than she already had. But the thought of what was the aforementioned woman had done this replayed in Mimi's mind again. How she forced both Sora and Songli to work against Mimi. The insult she had slung toward her friend. And above all, shutting everyone else out just to have him all to herself. Now she would not stand for it any longer. Putting on an angered look of her own, Mimi turned back to the shade before her, brewing in confidence. I didn't come this far to give up now, Ophelia. Now let me through and we'll settle this once and for all. As soon as her proclamation settled, Mimi could feel the air turn bitter and cold, that of no emotion or feeling. The shade before her suddenly branched out, tendrils sprouting from its figure as it began to lose form, slinking back into the entrance behind him. Your funeral. Without warning, the tendrils shot out, grabbing Mimi by her legs and slamming her to the ground. With her incapacitated, it began to pull her into the chamber, as she desperately tried to grab onto something to hold on. But they were much stronger than she was in that moment, and her hands only skid across the hard rock of the corridor as she was flung into the inner chambers, screaming all the way, "Shadow Rush! Help me!" Panicked, Rush frantically shot after Mimi, hoping and praying he would catch her. But before he can even reach the entrance, he felt his body slammed against something cold and hard. When he opened his eyes, he saw the entrance to the inner chamber was now blocked by a barrier of black tears. The moving barrier seemed to be alive, tears dripping off its unmoving stature. Rush desperately pounded against the wall with his hooves, hoping to somehow break it. "No, no, 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 no!" he shouted in between pounds. Defeated, he laid his head against the barrier, feeling its smooth, bitter texture rub against his forehead. He shut his eyes and simply sat there, knowing he might never see Mimi again. A single tear fell from his eye. I let you down. I let him down. I failed all of you. The end.
Yes.
At least the end of chapter 3.
Heavy stuff. Heavy stuff.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.